Hey everyone, welcome to Be the Change. My name is Lily Maud, and today's episode is about how change comes when you become a sponge. This week's episode features Reese Wong, who is a changemaker, community builder, and public speaker from Hong Kong and now living in London, and he has done some incredible work, so I'm excited to dive right in and share our conversation with you. Let's get started with this episode featuring Reese Wong.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Reese. I was born and raised in Hong Kong, but now I'm based in London. I'm a 21-year-old changemaker, community builder, and public speaker, really passionate about education, but also technology policy, and really about bringing people together. So back in Hong Kong, I was the founder of one of Hong Kong's largest youth-led nonprofits, HK. Now in London, I'm working on this sort of portfolio of different projects, really about community building, but also bringing people together.
I think that was a great overview. I think there's lots to dive in and talk about. Can you tell me about what got you started with this work? What made you want to
Yeah.
get started with this work in Hong Kong? And of course, tell me a little bit about your work as you're now in London and just how that's evolved. I'd love to get the full story. So tell me all about it.
Yeah. So yeah, when I was in Hong Kong, this was like way back in 2019. I was 16, and I was doing all these sort of very academic activities like Model United Nations, debate, and I enjoyed it, but I found myself really wanting to do more, wanting to actually get out there in the world. So when I did an internship at a mental health charity, I was like, wow, the fact that I could actually go out there and do things and learn so much simply through this sort of project-based learning model was something that excited me a lot. And from that, I started this nonprofit organization focused really on getting young people working on projects, learning from their peers. And I ran that for basically, yeah, 3 to 4 years. And I still serve as an advisor now, leading and advising some of the free successive leadership teams since then. And I think that also really broadened what I call my like imaginatory horizons. It taught me that, hey, you can think about something, you can conceive this idea in your head, and you can actually make it into something, into reality. And I think that really increased for myself this like level of agency, this level of thinking that, okay, I can actually do things. So then I moved to the UK for my university degree at the LSE. And I think I still had this sort of itch around like seeing problems around me, wanting to solve them, also really wanting to really continue building out communities. So that's what I've been doing with the Global Shapers, the Entrepreneur Society, but also for my own ventures, running like creative dinners, and really scaling that as well. So I think it's pretty wild to think that yes, an action I took at back all the way in age 16, I think still has ripple effects today, but also I think in many ways has like radically sort of shifted to the trajectory of my life in some ways, and it's pretty wild to think about because that's like yeah, nearly yeah 6 years ago now.
I think that is just an amazing story. And I love how you can kind of see the flow from thing to thing. And then it just makes me wonder what's next, which we'll definitely talk about. Can you tell me a little bit about some of the challenges that you might have faced throughout this? Because I think it's so interesting that you dove into this when you were 16
Mhm.
and you started this organization. And I love this idea of your horizons and just how you really saw all of these opportunities. And I think that's what a lot of young people might have these
Mm.
ideas, but there are barriers in the way. Can you tell me about some of the
Yeah.
challenges that you've faced and maybe how you overcame them, or even just setbacks that you faced? Because I
Mm.
think that's such
Mm.
an important part of the journey. I'd love to hear a little bit about that.
Yeah, so way back then in 2019, one of the challenges we faced in really getting set up was that there wasn't really something like this done in the Hong Kong ecosystem, right? The idea we had, this like network and this sort of project-based organization, wasn't radically new, but the fact is, even that sort of incremental innovation required like a lot of sort of conjuring of just effort and willpower to really get it through. So, we started off as just a network. We realized, okay, there wasn't really a value proposition around just the network itself. So we had to really define what is something that would really add value, what is something that would really serve as a way to really bring people in. And so we introduced a very simple idea. It was like an inter-school magazine, the same way schools have their own school newspapers and magazines. And we thought, okay, interschool. And we reached out to schools and we said, hey, we'd love for your students to really contribute to this magazine, get a chance to become editors, illustrators, designers. And I think that taught me this lesson in terms of value exchange, right? We could have went to schools and been like, hey, we're starting this thing, we'd love for you to share it. But for them, it's simply just us getting free advertising. But when we framed it as, hey, we'd love to give your students an opportunity to contribute, to write, to design, there was more of this fair exchange of value. And I think that was what helped us really get set up. They were really happy to help us promote it. And then I think things just spiraled from there. We started off with a magazine, but we recruited these editors, contributors, designers into other roles. Really, we were able to scale like massively to around, I think, 500 volunteers actually over the few years across 80 schools. So I think that was one of the challenges we faced initially was, what was our value proposition, figuring that out. But then secondly, how do we get buy-in, right? And I think my takeaway from that was you do have to offer value. You do have to offer this fair exchange of value before asking and asking for help and for support and advice. So I think that's one of those big lessons quite early on.
I love that. And I do think that's a huge part with social action work or anything that has to
Yeah.
do with making an impact on people is trying to figure out, how can we grow and how can we reach more people while also making sure that we're true to our mission and we're helping people while we're doing it. And I
Yeah.
think a value exchange is so important. So I love that you brought that up. So kind of switching gears here a little bit, but tell me about being a global shaper. What is that role like? How did you come into that role? Tell me a little bit about that part of your life and your story.
Yeah, it's amazing. And it really sort of served as this bridge between my work in Hong Kong and here in the UK. So, more broadly, the Global Shapers is an initiative under the World Economic Forum. Really, what it's about is around sort of local based social action. And it's a network of around more than 500 of these city-based hubs and young people, exceptional young people under 30, really committed to making an impact. A lot of these people have full-time jobs. They're working in really sort of intense full-time jobs as young professionals. A lot of the people and shapers are students, but it's really about making time to still work on social action outside of your day job. And yeah, being embedded in this global community. But for myself, really what was quite interesting is I came across the Shapers in Hong Kong, but you need to be 18 in order to join, so it was never something I necessarily engaged with. But I saw the London Shapers; they were opening up their applications, and I was literally still in Hong Kong, and I did the interview in Hong Kong, and then the moment I arrived in the UK, they told me I got in, and I sort of got immersed right back then in 2022 and since then have stepped up as the vice creator for our hub and now creator. So I'm leading the hub as well. And it's been very exciting. Last year, I had the chance to go to the WEF HQ in Geneva. I think every day I'm still connecting with amazing shapers across the world and really shaping our hub 3 years now into a hub that has over 8 of these local based social action projects and also poised to benefit 500 beneficiaries. And we're now building the hub infrastructure more and more as well. And yeah, it's been going well. It's a super exciting project.
That's so cool to hear. And I love that you've been able to really grow it. And I love that it was this kind of continuation from Hong Kong to London. I think your story is everything's so connected. It feels like the purpose is really there, which I think is great to hear. You're very clear with your mission, which I think is very important. That being said, can you tell me a little bit about what you're excited for this year? What big things are coming up for you in 2025, as much as you can tell me? I would love
Yeah.
to share that.
Yeah. So I think 2025 is a turning point for me. So obviously, I'm also in the final year of my undergraduate degree. It's figuring out what's next for me, sort of vocationally. But on the side, a few exciting projects I'm launching. And I've launched the Potential Fellowship, which is a fellowship I've put together, really focusing on this mission I've always had around how do you sort of maximize your potential. And my thinking is all around these soft skills, transferable project-based skills and so, as a fellow, you participate in these short sprints across 8 of our ecosystem organizations. So, like the Global Shapers, like these Entrepreneur Society, like my nonprofit in Hong Kong, where you work in these short 4 to 6 week bursts and you rotate, getting a really wide range and direct exposure to some of these really exciting youth led organizations. And I plan to keep scaling that so that we have different fellowships as well, sort of career exploration fellowships, fellowships focused on personal development So that's super exciting. Another side is I've been building out these curated dinners. And for the past year, we've done these dinners where instead of just throwing everyone into a room like in a networking event, we serve as hosts and facilitators working through these questions that really ideally get participants to know each other on a deeper level. And one of our last dinners, we had sort of groups of 4 to 5 people. We had 6 groups. We sent them to different restaurants to do these small sort of dinner discussions, and we gathered everyone back into a big group. And we're planning retreats. We're planning to keep scaling that into really a stronger sort of members community as well. So yeah, a lot of these projects I'm still building out and working on. I'm also running the startup incubators and fellowships as part of Stanford's Entrepreneurship Society as well. So yeah, a few different exciting things here and there. Still a whole portfolio of things. But yeah, still deciding what's next for me in 2026. But I think 2025 is really that year of reflection, really sort of deciding, what's next, really this inflection point, but still really, again, still contributing, still adding value where I can.
I think that's all really exciting, and I'll have to have you back on the podcast, maybe at the end of 2025, beginning of 2026, so we can do a little update. But that's awesome. I have one more question for you, and I feel like with all the work that you've talked about, I think you'll have a great answer to this. Lots of young people want to create change, but they might not know how to get started with that work. What advice would you want to share with those people who might be in that boat?
Yeah. My advice is always talk to people who have done something similar before. So when I first moved to London, one of the first things I did in my first year of university was really reach out to people for coffee chats. So I had more than like probably 50, 70, 100 of these sort of one-to-one conversations with people across all these sectors, age groups, like anything you can imagine. So my bar for coffee chats and these conversations was super low. And really, I think what that helped me gain is this like perspective, but being this sponge where I'm just learning from all these people. And that's what's super exciting because they have all these lived experiences, industry experience, insights, mental models, and being able to just sit there and absorb all of that, of course, still offering value is something that I think helped me really figure out ecosystems, communities, what to prioritize my time on. So where I've seen the people who start from literally zero in terms of network, but within a year, they could find themselves deeply embedded in these ecosystems and communities because they've identified the right people, these other community builders and ecosystem builders, and also just connected to enough people where they're able to figure out for themselves what's a gap in the market in terms of value you can bring, whether the spaces you want to be in, what project might you want to start. It really starts with, yeah, just the conversation.
Reese has made some incredible connections and has taken advantage of amazing opportunities in so many different sectors, and it was great to hear about how all of the work he's done intersects and how it aligns with his passion for making change. I want to highlight Reese's willingness to reach out, go for coffee chats, and learn from people with different lived experiences from his own. Community is so important, and reaching out to people and listening to their stories and their advice is a great way to build a wide community, like Reese has. So, I'm going to end this episode by highlighting an important piece of advice Reese shared, because change comes when you become a sponge. Thank you so much for listening to this episode, and you can find Reese on LinkedIn and Instagram, and I included those links in the description of this episode. If you want to talk about anything I mentioned, please reach out to me by email at lily@bethechangepodcast.org or on Instagram at Be The Change Media Network. I'm working on expanding Be The Change Media Network, which means bringing you more inspiring stories from amazing guests. If you enjoyed this episode, I would really appreciate it if you could leave the podcast a rating and a comment, because it will help these stories to reach, educate, and inspire more people. And I would love to hear your thoughts and feedback. Tune in for my next episode, but until then, be the change you wish to see in the world. Bye, guys.